On this episode, we discuss what the power of taking full responsibility for your birth and baby looks like, and turning that intuition dial all the way up, being completely in your power, not only through pregnancy, but through life, and connecting with those that feel and live in the same light. This episode is with Emily Lal. Emily is a wife, mother to 3 children, freebirther, and birthkeeper, supporting women to birth in full sovereignty and autonomy. Emily has a deep belief and trust in the power and wisdom of women's bodies and their babies to navigate the birth process together, uninhibited and undisturbed. She is passionate about bringing women back to themselves and bringing birth back to its roots. In the home, rejecting the current medical birth paradigm and its mistrust in women's bodies. Well, that's enough from me, guys. Let's jump straight in. Welcome to the Honesty Policy Hour. I'm your host, Stephanie Marie, and it's time to put everything on the table on this beautiful journey of healing all areas of our lives, one deep conversation at a time. Who's joining us today?
We've got Sienna with us today.
Hi, Sienna. She's like the smiliest baby. I can't handle her.
Yeah, she's landed different this one. She's such a happy baby.
She's beautiful.
Just really content.
That's so good. Why do you think that there is a reason for that, or do you think it's a personality?
I don't know. I'd like to think it has to do with my pregnancy and my birth with her. I think that always sort of plays a little bit of a part in personality, but I think it's just her. I think it's just this time as well. Like the babies that are coming through now are just so ready to be here. She's just the joy. And I don't know if it's because maybe she's my last baby, but I think I'm just enjoying her so much more as well.
You're just more present with her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, like, you know, they tell you, like, oh, it goes so quickly. Third time around, I've actually figured out it does. It goes so fast. So I'm just trying to enjoy every minute with her.
It's. I think that's a really hard one. Just trying to be in the moment. You just get so in your mum head at the start, where it's just like, I've got to do the washing, got to get dinner, I've got to do this. I'll worry about them later. Like as long as they're healthy and safe, it's okay. But just being with them, that's just all they want, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like if she's in my arms, she's happy, you know. And I think this is really the first time where I'm not wishing this time away.
Yeah.
Like yes, she's, you know, she needs me a lot, and she wakes up in the night and all of that. But I'm okay with it this time, rather than it being like some thing that I have to fix or move through or get out of.
It's really special. It's just I noticed that a lot with me. I was like, the minute I'm just calm and I'm just with Atlas, he just responds so beautifully to that. It's just like when I'm rushing around, he just sees me rushing, and it's like they can sense that stress.
Yes.
And it's just, it's really interesting, isn't it?
It's wild how attuned they are to other people's emotions, and I guess it's a protective thing because babies need to know, like, am I safe or not, by gauging how other people are feeling. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you know, if you're in an anxious state, then they'll be quite unsettled. Whereas if you're really grounded and centered, obviously sometimes they're going through their own stuff, but they can kind of anchor onto you.
Yeah.
They're our biggest mirrors, babies.
Oh my goodness, they're triggering as all hell, aren't they?
Yes, you're a trigger, aren't you? In the best way, though. Like, I think it's challenging as well, though, and I think it's always the firstborns that do it for you. So, like, my son is my biggest trigger and my biggest teacher.
For you and your husband, or just for you?
For me.
Yeah.
For me, yeah. And it's because he is me. Like, personality-wise, we're two peas in a pod.
Really?
So all the bits of him that frustrate me are all the bits, really, of myself that I haven't dealt with. They teach you so much, but this one's just teaching me to just be a little more slow and a little more present.
Just be.
Yeah.
Did you notice that with Michael very early on, or did it happen like a bit more toddler ages?
Early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, from even before he was 1, I would say. He's always been challenging for me from a mothering perspective. And it's evolved over the last 4 years, definitely, but yeah, still my biggest challenge is mothering him. The girls are a bit easier for me. Their dispositions are just different. Whereas, I don't know how else to explain it. Michael is just me personality-wise, so
They say the girls are usually harder for the women to deal with. It's funny that you've just got the flip switch off for now anyway.
For now, yeah. Let's wait till they're teenagers and come back to me. But no, like from these toddler years so far, the girls, Stevie's. I mean, she's only 2. So.
Yeah, she's young.
But the girls I find easier, and I don't know if it's because I dealt with my mother wound and sister wound stuff in pregnancy, that I'm not having to deal with it too much now. Whereas, I think that the masculine side, I still have a lot of work to do. Because if you don't deal with it in your pregnancy, it will come up in your birth. If it doesn't come up in your birth, it will definitely come up postpartum and in mothering. So it's always an opportunity, but it's the hardest work that you'll do, dealing with all these wounds from our own childhood, so we don't have to make the same mistakes with our own children.
It's very intense.
And each pregnancy gives you new opportunities to do that as well. It's not like, I did it once and I'm done now.
Done. Looked at it, acknowledged it, I'm fixed. No, it doesn't work like that. Self-development is exactly that. It's a developing process.
Ends,
No.
But so much came up for me in my pregnancy with her, and because I think, third time around, second free birth, I was like, I know what I need to do. So I did it, and it's paid off so far. So the birth and so far postpartum has just been wonderful with this one. I mean, it's been challenging because, I'm working and I'm tired and, all that stuff. But
it's the external stuff, the inner stuff you feel settled.
The inner stuff is good. The external stuff is challenging, but
that's the bit that needs the most love, isn't it? It's the inner stuff. If the external world, if the external is producing chaos, you can kind of just deal with the punches.
Yes.
But when the inner stuff is not settled, that's when the external world kind of repels that, I guess.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, if there's everyone's busy. We've all got way too much on our plates and all of that. But if my inner core is settled, I can deal with that stuff. Maybe not deal with it well all the time, but I can deal with it. Yeah,
and you get better at it.
Yeah, 100%.
As you said, the third time round feels easier.
Yeah.
Munchkin.
You are a bit easier, aren't you? But yeah, she's just a joy, this one.
She's beautiful.
Thank you.
And how's it going now with the free births? Do you feel like it's getting more popular at the moment?
Yeah, it's tricky for me to say because I've only been doing this for, I think I'm coming into my 3rd year now. So when I first started, COVID was already a thing. So it was busy from the get-go because a lot of women didn't want to go to hospital. They didn't want what the hospital had to offer, so this was one of the alternatives. So a lot of women turned to free birth for that reason. Now that COVID's done, I'm just as busy, but the women that are choosing free birth are choosing for much better reasons, in my opinion. It's like, I'm wanting this because this is exactly what I want and these are the reasons I want it, not I don't want the other thing.
Yeah, okay.
So, it is really busy. And I think it will just continue to grow because, unfortunately, the medical system, in my opinion, it's not broken. It works perfectly. It's a well-oiled machine. It's a business. And as women are becoming more aware of the pitfalls of that system, they're choosing not to opt into it. So a lot of first-timers are choosing free birth for that reason. And then, sadly, a lot of women who have had a crappy experience in the system will be like, well, I know I don't want that again, so what else is there? And come to free birth for that reason as well. So I think it's definitely growing and it's here to stay. And I think, even COVID was a real catalyst for that as well. Women, not just women, but people in general, really coming back to themselves and questioning narratives and questioning the mainstream path, and it can't be undone now. Now that we're on that path, I think more and more women will start to see birth for what it is and make different choices. And I find it funny that I feel like birth is like the final frontier. You can have people that are so naturally minded and, want to homeschool or don't vaccinate or whatever. But when it comes to birth, we're still so programmed to fear it that we immediately go into that system. It's slowly turning, and I can see the ripple effects as well, where you plant seeds and more women are starting to ask themselves the right questions.
I feel like personally it is scary because all you hear is shitty stories.
But they're all in the hospital.
Well, they are. Thank God I was at the hospital, or my baby would have died if I wasn't at the hospital, or I would have died if I wasn't at a hospital. So you hear this stuff so much, and it just takes a lot of unlearning, and it's not learning a new way, it's just unlearning what we taught for hundreds of years.
Not really.
How long?
If you think about it, your nonna, she probably would have been born
at home. Yeah.
So we're only 1 or 2 generations in.
There you go.
But it was such a
deep,
effective strategy where we made obstetrics the gatekeepers of birth, where it's like, well, no, like your body's unsafe. This is an unpredictable process that, could go wrong at any moment, and you need the experts here to make sure that you're safe and your baby is safe. And it blows my mind how much people actually think that, the obstetricians or the midwives or whoever it is actually know more about your body and your baby than you do, and even care about that more than you do. Like, when you start to really analyse that, you're just like, oh, it's laughable.
Yeah.
But that's sort of what we've been conditioned to believe. And the other side of it, of course, is just because of the way that we live our lives now, until you're giving birth yourself, you've probably never witnessed a birth before.
No.
Your partner will never have witnessed birth or have any idea about birth until, you're giving birth yourself.
Yeah, it's such we're so disconnected from it. Like, I remember when that I was pregnant with Atlas, and that birth, what was that documentary, Birth Time? Was it Birth Time? That came out, and I booked it with, I think this is just after I told my mum and my mother-in-law were thinking about having a home birth, and I was like, I'm going to take them to these just to give them a bit of an idea. And we got there a little bit late, and as we walked in, there was a lady with legs open crowning, and my mum, that was the first time she had ever seen anything like it. I'm 35 years old, and she was so like, oh my God, that's disgusting sort of mentality. And like, it's not her fault because she has just never really seen anything like that before. But it's just very interesting. Like, my pastime when I had insomnia with Atlas was watching Homebirth YouTube videos. Like, that was what I was just watching because I wanted to know so much. But it's really interesting to see the previous generation being so disconnected from it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, because it's not seen as a normal bodily function anymore. It's seen as it's a medical condition, and it's a medical procedure, rather than it being like breathing, like digesting food. Like, it's just something that our bodies do.
Yeah.
And that is true, but the problem that we face now is that our minds can really sabotage us so much. Are you okay? And that's the biggest problem, is that it's our perceptions and our beliefs and our conditioning around birth that hijacks the natural process. Like, it's the same as I heard it on a podcast the other day, and I thought it was such a good analogy. Like, you don't have to think about breathing right now, you're just breathing in and out. Like, it's not a conscious effort. But if you're getting up in your head about something, you can start to become anxious and hyperventilate, and all of a sudden something that was a really simple process that didn't require much effort is impossible for you to do. Birth is the same.
It is.
It's just like, same with digestion. If we're nervous, we can get the runs, and all of a sudden, like, why isn't my food digesting?
Butterflies.
Yeah. It's a normal bodily function, but our minds can stuff it up for us.
Of course. I think my example is very much like that. I think, when you don't process things, like, grief got in the way with my birth, and I see that so clearly now. But at the time and afterwards, I didn't think it was a problem. But it's really interesting to see how your mind, I feel that when it got really hard, I was like, I need help. That was where my mind went. And now I look at it, and it wasn't help that I needed. I needed to just process that and sit with it and just go there harder or faster or just really sink into that. And it's, I say that now, but for the next time round, which I will do a home birth, it does, it makes me really nervous getting there again, very nervous, because it is all mental.
Yes. And I guess the tricky part is, like, obviously, like, 90% of my job is trying to prepare women, but it's really difficult to do because it's all that internal excavation that you need to do about, like, well, how do I deal with challenging situations? What are my triggers? How do I react when I'm faced with something physically or emotionally challenging? And, like, only you can answer those questions, and only you can break those patterns. So we can kind of, like, act as a mirror to say, like, these are some things that you might want to look at, but unless the woman is really willing to do it, it's not something that anyone can do for her.
No.
It's not something that we can save you from. It's not something that we can take away from you. And well, I guess, and that's the other big part when it comes to birth in the system, is that birth is a rite of passage, and it's a rite of passage that women have built into their DNA that they need to go through. And women are having that rite of passage taken away from them in the system, where it's like, yeah, it is becoming too hard, save me. And they're like, okay, we'll do it for you. We'll give you the epidural. We'll do, all of those things. And at the time, maybe it's what the woman thinks she wants, but really what we're doing is taking her power away from her. And yes, she's offering it up, but it's our job as people in the birth space to not take that power when she's trying to give it to us. I've had 2 births last week, both very challenging, very long births, both first timers. One was 3 days, one was nearly 5 days.
Wow.
And these women, they did it. And it was amazing. But there were so many times throughout their births where they were like, someone save me, someone please take my power away from me. What position do I go in? How do I do this? And it's really hard for the partner or the mum or the birthkeeper or whoever's there to be like, I can see you struggling and I can see you trying to hand me your power right now, and I'm not going to take it from you. You can do this. You are doing this. Keep going. And it's putting the ball back in their court, and then it's up to them to do it. And that it's very simple, but it's also very challenging because we're hardwired to want to fix and want to save, and it's not something that we can save women from.
No.
It's not something that needs to be feared. It's very confronting to watch someone that you love going through it, but when you see them come out on the other side, they can do anything, and it's the most amazing. Like, these women are transformed. You see it time and time again, and they're always so thankful after the fact that you didn't take their power away from them, even though they thought it's what they wanted in the moment. Because if it's what they really wanted, then they would call an ambulance and and they would go to hospital. They say it, but they don't really want it.
No.
They just want to be witnessed. That's all it is.
Well, we're just so programmed to have a headache, take a Panadol.
Yes.
Like, we're just very reactive to our emotions and our feelings that it can... Yeah, sometimes it doesn't serve us. Sometimes we have to go through it or figure a way to really process that. And in this case, it's just go with it, isn't it?
Yeah, you just have to do it. You just have to keep going.
Yeah.
And also, like, the other part of the equation is... Hey, it's all right.
What's wrong, darling?
The other part of the equation is the baby as well. Like, this is their rite of passage. This is, like, the first really challenging thing that they're going to have to do in their life. And you don't want to take that away from them either. It's... I think I see it even with my son. So he's the only baby that I didn't free birth. I had a midwife with him. And granted, it was a very hands-off birth. But when his head was born, it took, a minute or two for his body to come. And the midwife just very gently, used her hand to just kind of turn his head to help birth his shoulders. And I don't know if I, project this onto... what I see with him or not, but what I really see with my son is that you can't force him to do something before he's ready. He really needs to do some stuff in his own time. And I feel like I took that away from him in his birth, where I didn't let him complete his own birth process in his own time. It was interrupted and he was kind of hurried along. And he was definitely hurried along in his transition once he was born as well, to get moving and get breathing. And, they, because that's what midwives do, they have to rush that process. They have to rub the baby and get the baby to cry and all of that. And I see him really rebelling against that in his life, where he's just like, no one will get me to do anything that I'm not ready to do.
Wow.
It's such a huge pattern for him. It's a huge, I think Jane Hardwick Collins talks about it a lot, and there is a book about different ways of being born and how it affects you in your adult life. I can't remember the name of it, but she talked about how, so she was a C-section baby as well, and it was sort of halfway through her birth process where she was, physically removed from her mum's body. And she notices that when she's doing a project or something now, she kind of loses her momentum halfway through, because that's where she was saved in her birth. So she's sort of learned now that if that she loses her motivation, she needs to stop what she's doing, go do something else, and then sort of come back to it later, because that's her pattern, that's her birth pattern, and it plays out in life. So once you've identified those patterns within yourself, you can start to undo them a little bit. And I mean, ideally we want to undo those patterns before going into our own birth, so that we're not, repeating the same mistakes or making new ones with our own children. But I think the importance of how we're born has kind of really been forgotten. Like now it's just, she'll be so happy in your arms. Take her.
Come here, darling.
All that matters is the live baby in the bassinet at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's so much more than that. It's more than that for us, and it's more than that for our babies. And I think more and more women are starting to sort of, come back to the importance of that and make different choices.
Yeah.
And also it's about, having that real trust in your own body and in your own physiology, and knowing in your soul that you will do it. Knowing that not only am I capable of doing it, but I will do it.
I was born to do this.
Exactly.
It's written in our coding. This is what we're made to do, but I feel like a lot of this stuff now it's coming to fruition because we're starting to see that this is a reason. Like before that, we were just in the system and this is what we're just used to. But now it's like, from people's other experiences that I've heard from other home birthing mums that have had this, and then you just saying what you said before about Michael, like these stories make us think about our own stories. So before that we had nothing to compare, so we had no idea. But it's nice now that there's communities coming, people are having these conversations, and people are understanding that it's there's another way of thinking and another way of birthing.
Yeah, and I think
The right way or the original way.
Yeah, and so many people are very careful to be like, all births are the same and and I really don't believe that that's true.
No.
I think when we honour our physiology, birth unfolds as safely as it can for us and for our babies. And birth is inherently safe and unsafe. I don't know who said it, but birth is as safe as life gets.
Yeah.
Everything carries a level of risk, and at the end of the day, it really just comes down to what risks are you comfortable taking for yourself and for your child. So for me, the risks that come with free birth are absolutely risks that I'm willing to take in comparison to the known risks of having a medical professional in my space. So for me, it's a no-brainer, and that's why I birth my babies the way I do, and I think it's the reason why a lot of my clients birth their babies in that way as well. Yes, there's risk, we acknowledge that risk, but there's risk in everything that we do. Like literally everything we do carries risk, and it's just which risks you're comfortable taking.
Yeah. And what are those risks? Like what were the risks that you were afraid of in the hospital?
So in the hospital, your risks of intervention, C-section, episiotomy, forceps, augmentation, medication, hemorrhage, like all of these risks skyrocket. And I mean, there's no stats on free birth because no one that's free birthing wants to be observed. But even if you look at planned home births versus planned hospital births, regardless of where you actually give birth, your chances of having a C-section are like 40% reduced, even if you end up birthing in hospital, if you had planned to be at home. Like your chances of episiotomy, your chances of a forceps delivery, your chances of all these interventions are so greatly reduced just by where you plan to give birth. You know what I mean? And like the C-section rate is like 40% or something crazy now. We know. Really?
I think last year it was 30. Has it gone up already?
Yeah.
What?
In 2022, I think it was 37.
Oh my God.
It's ridiculous. It's skyrocketing, and we know. Like, there's no chance that 40% of women aren't capable of giving birth. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's a huge number.
Yeah. But the other side of it was, even if I was to have a home birth with a registered midwife at home, I'm outsourcing responsibility for my well-being or for the well-being of my baby to somebody else. And to me, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And I saw that even with my first birth with Michael. I had the midwife there. I could not tell you if Michael moved throughout my whole labour. I couldn't tell you what he was doing. I was so disconnected from him because in my mind, that wasn't my job. The midwife was going to tell me if everything was okay. And I feel like that disconnection is quite dangerous. And now in hindsight, looking at the way I birthed him and the way I've birthed my girls, I was so in tune with them throughout the whole process, and I was reassured of their well-being because of that connection that I had cultivated throughout pregnancy. It's not something you can just switch on in birth. You really need to cultivate that connection. But I really felt the difference in my body when I took that level of responsibility for myself and for my baby. And even just saying it out loud now, of course I'm responsible for my baby. Like, who else is responsible for what? Like, of course it's me. And of course I'm responsible for my own well-being. And once you look at it through that lens, then there's no other way to do it, really, in my opinion. So the last, Sienna's birth was by far my most enjoyable and my easiest birth, and it was just my husband and I at that birth. And having done it that way now, I'll never do it any other way.
Wow.
I could really feel the difference in my body because my physiology was so respected and so protected. There was just no external intervention whatsoever, even someone else's presence. It just wasn't a thing. And my body worked exactly as it was designed to because there was no interruption.
Even with your second Stevie, was it the same?
And not the same as Sienna. So with Stevie, I had... do you need a feed? What's going on?
Darling.
Yeah, with Stevie's birth, it was a free birth, but I had a friend there taking photos, and I had my sister there as well. And loved having my sister there. It was exactly the kind of energy that I needed. It was the first birth she'd ever attended apart from her own, and she was fantastic. And I think that really sort of reaffirmed for me that supporting women is exactly how it's supposed to be. Like, she has no experience, and she was perfect in the space. Wow. Having a camera there, in hindsight, I mean, I love those photos. I cherish them, but I wouldn't do it again.
Wow.
Because it's very hard to not feel observed when there's a camera in the room.
That's so interesting.
And birth photographers are as good as being a fly on the wall as they can be with a camera in their hand, but...
They've still got a camera.
Yeah. So I really, felt the difference in that birth compared to Sienna's birth, where I was by myself 80% of the time, and just woke my husband up right at the end when I felt like I needed some support. And it was just he and I there, and I think my favourite part of that birth was when she was born, the silence, where it was just no one being like, oh, you did it, or talk to her, like it was nothing. It was just silence and just me meeting my baby that I'd waited 9 months to meet, and my husband like just smiling and saying like, oh, hi, baby. Like that moment, it's probably one of the best moment of my life. Like I cherish it so much, and you don't realise the impact of having little moments like that taken away from you or having them interrupted in any way until you've seen the opposite. And like for me, it's like, subtle differences in my free births, but I can really see the difference. I really struggle to wrap my head around having those kind of moments in a hospital setting.
Yeah. No way. There's no chance that you would get that there. There's just so many people. There's so much noise. It's just, no, that would not happen. Not at all.
Yeah, it breaks my heart because I think women really don't know what they're missing out on, I think. But I think, more and more women are starting to realise that there's some power here that we've been disconnected from, and it's it can be scary to step into that power and to take it back. But once you do, like, everything's changed forever. Like I'm a completely different person to who I was before I had my babies. I mean, we are all forever changed after we have our kids, but the transformation that I've experienced through these births, the transformation in my relationship with my husband, all of it, I attribute it all to the way that I've given birth.
It's beautiful. And also because you've had 3 different experiences with your birth, it would be interesting to see you as being a birth keeper and how you are in the birth rooms. Did that make a difference after Sienna was born?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely did. I've always tried to be as unobtrusive as possible, but that really highlighted for me how important it is. So I try and do that even more so now. But I mean, the more births I attend, the less I realise I know about birth.
Really? Because something that happens always that's different.
Every birth is different. I mean, every birth is very much the same. A baby comes out of a woman's body, but they're all so different. And it's a constant practice for me to have to remind myself that I know nothing. If a woman's asking, oh, what position should I be in, or what do you think would work best, and I'm just like, I don't know. I have no idea. I really don't know, because I can't feel what's going on in your body. I can't see what's going on with the baby. It's a mystery to me. So it's a constant practice of reminding the woman, you're the one that's in your body. You're the one that has a direct connection to your baby. You need to do what feels best for you.
Yeah.
I can give you my opinion and it could be way off base. And I've had that in the birth space as well, where women have asked me, and I'd be like, oh, why don't you try this? And then, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, great. Keep doing what you're doing then. Like, I'm not the expert. Each woman is the expert in her own body.
Of course.
And has that direct connection with her baby. But it's a muscle that you have to exercise. It's not something that you can just switch on and off, No. It's a connection that needs to be cultivated, and that confidence within yourself needs to be cultivated. It's not something that you can just rock up to birth and be like, all right, let's do
let's do this. Yeah, no.
It's really like how you live is how you'll birth. So it's something that needs to be embodied.
Big time.
Even
Even just tapping into that, like listening to your body and really like, is it my mind getting in the way, or is my body telling me something? Like learning the difference between that is really important. Like I feel that, before my son was born, and like, even through like training sessions, like I'd listen to like, oh, I feel like giving up, but that's just my mind. It's not my body that's sore. It's like little things like that, and really just acknowledging it or just seeing it, because you don't know that you're doing it until you actually catch yourself saying it. So having those moments through your life, or just putting yourself in situations where you can easily give up. Like you were saying, I remember about the cold shower therapy. I remember that I struggled doing that so much during pregnancy. It was too hard and I didn't do it. It was just too hard. And it came through in my birth, and it was like it got hard, and that was enough. And it's really, I see the importance now in all those areas that giving up, are you really doing it, or is it like, do you need to, or is it just your mind's just having a bit of a freak out, which 9 out of 10 times it usually is, hey?
99 out of 100 even, yeah.
Wow.
And it's a lot of women have a hard time discerning fear from intuition, and to my mind it's like if you're having a hard time figuring out which one it is, it's probably fear.
Yeah.
Like intuition comes through very clearly and very strongly, in my opinion. Whereas if you're like, oh, like, I don't know what I'm feeling, or like it's usually fear and doubt creeping in, but we're not used to identifying it and moving through it, and that's where we can set ourselves up for failure. And the cold shower training, I recommend it to all my first timers, because it's one of the few things that I think you can do where you're putting yourself in a very physically uncomfortable situation, and you can sort of analyze yourself in that situation and be like, okay, like what am I doing? Where am I holding tension? How am I resisting? And what can I do to get back into my body and out of my head and move through this uncomfortable situation? Birth is nothing like a cold shower, but I think the cold shower training is just an opportunity to show ourselves like how we react in those uncomfortable situations, and then try to find a way to break that pattern. I hate cold showers, hate them with a passion, but I do them in solidarity with my clients when I have someone doing it. They're like, if you're going to do it, I'll do it too. Like, but I hate them, but I'll do it anyway. And that's kind of how I see the preparation for birth is like, you don't know what your birth is going to be like, but if you know that you'll do it regardless of what it throws at you, then you're set. Like I had a really straightforward, easy, I would say painless birth with Sienna. She was posterior for about half an hour, which really sucked and was really hard and challenging. But other than that, I would have said her birth was painless. Painless, which is not the case for my other two. Did I walk into that birth expecting it to be painless? No. Did I expect it to be quick? No. I was like, whatever it is, I will do it. I know that I will do it because my conviction is strong, my beliefs around birth are strong, and my responsibility to myself and my baby is my overarching driving force. So it did not matter to me how that birth unfolded. I knew I would do it. It was a happy coincidence that it was quick and easy and painless.
Oh my goodness.
But even if it wasn't, I know I would have done it. I think there's a lot to be said around like the preparation for birth when it comes to the intensity. I think a lot of women think that they can sort of manifest some sort of pain-free orgasmic experience, and for some women it will be, and that's great, but I think you really set yourself up for failure if that's what you're aiming for and that's what you're expecting, and then you get something different. So these two births that I was just at last week, both really long, both really challenging, both babies were a bit off centre and had their hands up by their faces. Can you control if your baby's hand is up by its face? No. But if it is up by its face, it's probably going to be a more challenging, more difficult, longer labour, and you have to be prepared to do that and move through it. So if you're prepared for that and you get anything less, then you're sweet. Whereas if you're prepared for it to be quick and easy and you get anything more than that, you're gonna stuff yourself up.
Prepare for the worst, expect the best.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I was open to it being a wonderful, painless experience, and I did the things that I could do that were within my control to try and set myself up for that, but it was not an expectation.
Yeah. What were the things that you could prepare?
Body work is so important. I really can't exaggerate how important body work is. Pick your modality, like physio, osteo, chiro, whatever you want, but it's really important to create balance in the pelvis and to release any tension in the pelvis. Because if there's tension on one side of the pelvis versus the other, that's going to potentially encourage that baby to move off to one side. The other thing that I did a lot of in my pregnancy with Sienna was internal pelvic release work. So we store a lot of tension in our pelvis. And it's the same as a muscle, if you find that pressure point where you're just like, oh, and then you have to kind of hold it for that pressure to release. The vagina is the same. There's so much tension that we can hold, that we can release through physically finding those points and releasing them. And I think that made a huge difference for me. When I first started doing the internal pelvic release work, there was so much tension. And then by the end of it, I was like, no, everything's soft, everything's relaxed. So I've just afforded my baby the best opportunity to get into a good position for birth, and for my body to open as optimally as it can, without that resistance.
Wow.
So that was a huge game
Where did you
changer
do that?
So there's a lovely woman named Molly. I'll send you the link to her page if you want to add it to your show notes.
Yeah.
So she offers it, Fiona Hallinan. There are a lot of other practitioners that offer as well. So I did one session with Molly, and then I just bought a cervical one and did it myself the rest of the pregnancy. And it was just a really nice way to be able to connect with myself and connect with my body and be really in tune with my body. I honestly can't recommend it enough. And I think particularly for first timers, I think we are so not connected with our sexual organs. Most women have never even looked at their own vulvas before having a baby. Some women will never even put their own fingers inside their vagina. Like, they're just really disconnected from their own bodies. And then you have to be so in tune with yourself in childbirth, and it's quite confronting. So I think, really getting in touch with your own body, and being comfortable in your own body is so important. And don't even get me started if there's any sexual trauma in your past as well, how much that can impact that process. I think the best thing that a woman can do for herself in her pregnancy is to really get in touch with her body, whatever that looks like, however you do it. That's probably the most important thing, getting out of your head and getting really into your body and being comfortable in your body.
I hear that a lot. A lot of people that I know that have had like one-on-one sessions, like not therapy sessions, like with midwives and stuff, where you can do like what are they called? Where they're just like sessions where you're talking about like your fears if you've had sexual trauma and stuff like that. What are they called? Just one-on-one sessions that you can do.
Yeah, like a debrief.
Something like that. So she did, one of my girlfriends did that, and she noticed a huge difference during her pregnancy, before and after the chat, of just releasing it, and the midwife just gave her a few little pointers of things that she could do to work through that, or just little tips and tricks that you can do. And she was like, I felt like a new person after that, because it's, when you don't acknowledge it all, it's like a sore point. You get really nervous or really scared to touch it. It's like when you're going through any issue emotionally. If it's too sore, you're just like, no,
I'm just going
to leave it, and then it'll come up. So
that's the problem. Yeah.
Big time. So I think when it comes to grief or sexual trauma or whatever it is, that's a big one when it comes to birth. My goodness.
Yeah, and the body keeps score. Like, as much as you want to switch your mind off from it, the body always keeps score. And if it doesn't come up in your pregnancy, it will come up in your birth. If it doesn't come up in your birth, it will come up in your postpartum. So and I feel like almost everything comes up in pregnancy, but it's up to us whether we want to look at it or not.
Yeah.
So we can be like, nah, that's too hard. I'm just going to shut that down. Can't look at that right now, and we'll pay for it later. Whereas, birth really gives us the opportunity to look at all those little pieces of ourselves that we've been carrying with us, that we've been too scared to look at. Yeah. It all comes to the surface. And it's the same in your relationship as well, like your relationship with your partner. If there's anything that needs working through, it comes up in pregnancy. And like, you know, we get blamed like, oh, you know, hormones and da-da-da. I'm like, no, this is the body's intelligence and the pregnancy's intelligence going like, this is some shit that you might want to deal with. Like, deal with it now because it will bite you later if you don't.
And the first time pregnancy, I think there's this thing where, you know, you just see all these Instagram videos and all these like movies where just the first time pregnancy, you just want to sit on a chair and just being like, this beautiful mermaid on a rock. I'm a goddess. But like there's so much that comes through, and I feel that like when it does come through, it's just like, no, I want it to be perfect. That story is a really popular one, and definitely one that happened to me as well. But it's there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like the mess is the beauty of it. Like
on the other side of the mess, that's the medicine.
There's so much open to us if we're willing to do that hard work. Like we are so energetically open in pregnancy, and it's. I mean, I haven't gone through menopause yet, but it's like so far in my life, pregnancy is the biggest opportunity for transformation that we have available to us.
Big time.
And I think it's intentional from the medical model that we have, you know, gone so far away from our intuition that it's like I feel like it's intentional where they're disconnecting us from our babies, disconnecting us from our bodies, because they're afraid of what the world would look like if we all stepped into that power. Like it would be a different world. It would change the world overnight. So yeah, it like warms my heart that more and more women are waking back up to that. But it's not happening fast enough for my liking either.
It's a lot of unlearning, as I said before. There's just so much going on, but there wasn't a long time. It was 2 generations, as you said. But that work that they did is very deeply ingrained. So it's going to take the same amount to really get in there. But like when people, even when I said at the start when I was doing a home birth, man, the people look at you like you got 4 heads.
But that's coming from a place of fear, and it's coming from a place of being uneducated about birth and about birth physiology. Like if for anyone that's interested, just go into any podcast search and look up Sarah Buckley, for example. She really unpacks the hormones of birth and the physiology of birth and makes it so easy to understand. So like in a nutshell, the physiology of birth is dependent on us feeling safe and unobserved. And that's when birth will unfold as optimally as possible. So even if you logically think, oh, I'm in the hospital, I'm safe, your ancient brain, your instincts are screaming danger. It's an unfamiliar environment with strange people and smells and sights, and it's brightly lit. It's all the danger signals in your body are turned on, and that's why you hear so many women be like, oh, you know, labour was going great at home and then I got to hospital and everything stopped. And then they'll be labelled as failure to progress, and their labour will be augmented, and they get an epidural, and then all of a sudden the baby's in distress and they've ended up in a C-section. And you'll hear so many different iterations of that story, and they'll be like, oh, my body failed me. And I'm like, actually, your body worked exactly as it was supposed to, because you moved into this new environment where your body's going, this doesn't feel safe. This probably isn't a good place to release my baby. So your body stops labour so that you can hold on to your baby until you move into a different environment where you feel safe, and then labour can continue. Your body's working perfectly, but they've flipped the script on us going like, oh, you know, we need some help to get things moving. Your body's just not, you're not dilating, or whatever the story is. It's ridiculous. And like, I cannot tell you how many iterations of that story I hear on a daily basis from women saying like, oh, you know, do you think I could have a free birth because like I just don't dilate, or my baby got stuck, or
my baby's too big.
All of these stories, which is ridiculous. Like I've had women push for 10 hours. Like they absolutely 100% would have ended up in a C-section. Both these births last week would have ended up in a C-section.
They were in the system.
Every single one of them would have ended up having surgery, because we can't let women just be in labour for as long as they like. You know, we've got beds, we've got staff, we've got to move people in and out. Like, you know, the hospital at the end of the day is a business. It needs to be profitable. And in order for it to be profitable, they need to be able to know how many beds they're going to have, how many women they're going to have, how many staff they need to have rostered on. Like, you can't just be in there for 5 days labouring willy-nilly and taking up all these resources. We can just do a 15-minute surgery on you, and that's much more cost-effective. We make more money. It's far more efficient. I can control the outcome, because that's the other thing, is like medicalised birth is all about the interventions being the solution. Statistically, we know that doing nothing is the safest route, but an obstetrician is never going to be able to sit on his hands and let this, unknown force unfold in its own time, where they're like, well, I can control the outcome. And they don't look at the downflow effect of that. So, look at C-sections, for example. It increases your risks in subsequent births. And so the risk that we've mitigated by removing that baby surgically, we're just pushing it downstream. That risk then flows on to the next baby or the baby after that.
Of course.
But we don't look at those consequences. We look at the here and now, and it's like, well, what can I do? Yeah, I can do a 15-minute surgery and there's a baby in the bassinet. Good job, well done.
Because I feel like you do hear a few stories where they were floating around about home birth where babies didn't make it and stuff like that. And it's like, don't worry about the thousands and thousands of things that happen positively. It's always like the one or two things that happen negatively really sit in people's minds, and they really struggle to move past that. Oh, but there's that situation, or there's that. Like, what happens? Like, what are the risks of a home birth in that regard?
The risks of a home birth. So there is a very small risk, and I can't tell you what the percentage is, but there is a very small risk that there would be some sort of life-saving emergency where, if you had a theatre next door, then that would be the difference between life and death. Mm-hmm. That's always a possibility. In saying that, though, the majority of babies that die in hospital.
Yeah.
And I think it's so... what's the word I'm looking for? It's like I think obstetricians and the medical system think that they can play God, where they think they can save these babies, and it's just not true. Like, babies will die sometimes in birth, but birth is designed to work really well most of the time. In my mind, if something is going wrong in a home birth, the mum is going to know long before anyone else knows that there's a problem. I'm not feeling my baby moving inside of me. I feel like something's off. Like, my intuition is...
Yeah, there's something wrong.
Something's going on. I think maybe I want to go and get some more help. Then they should go and do that. But, other than excessive bleeding, there's really nothing that tells us that there's a problem in birth. So it's up to the mum to be in tune with herself and to be in tune with her baby. And the fact of the matter is, most women aren't willing to take that level of responsibility for themselves or for their babies. And I think, like I said, for me, like, of course I'm responsible for my child. That doesn't change once they're born. Like, I'm the one that's responsible for their well-being. I'm the one that will decide whether what's happening is safe and normal, or whether I think I need some extra support. Yeah. If something is going wrong, like at home, usually it's not, this time-sensitive emergency. It's like you've got time, you can go to hospital if that's what you want to do. In saying that, though, it's been 18 months since I've had a woman transfer in. Like, birth works really well when you leave it alone. Like, it works time and time again. Sometimes it takes longer than we want. Sometimes it's more challenging than we'd like, but it works. And it's about returning to that trust of, like, I trust my body. I trust that my body knows how to give birth, and I trust my baby.
Yeah.
I trust that my baby is an active participant in their birth, and the way that they're being born is a choice for them. Breech babies are a perfect example of that, where it's really about, do I trust that my baby knows how to navigate my pelvis and that they're coming out in the way that is best for them, and that trust continues on throughout the child's life as well. Like, it's a practice for me to really return to trust when it comes to, like, things that my kids are doing at the playground, or even, like, whether or not they want to eat their dinner or not. It's like,
there's so much. So much.
It's about relinquishing that control.
I get so nervous about, especially when things go wrong a little bit, or like he's just got a bit of a rash, or he's just been sooky. I'm like, what's wrong? Like, what can I do to fix it? Yeah. So it's really just going down to that trust, and that's a really hard one, especially when it comes to illness. That was one I had a lot of work to do on that one, because I would just freak out by the smallest things, because your brain goes to the worst case scenarios all the time, because you just hear so many shit stories that just are there to just scare you. And like, even like some pages on Instagram I had to like unfollow. Like that Tiny Hearts one was a really great example. Oh, yeah. There was just too much there that I was like, nah. Some of my girlfriends had said the same thing, where it was just this information that you didn't need to know, because there were just fluke, ridiculous things that could go wrong. And I was like, I don't need that right now. I've got enough shit going on in my head where it's just really, it's a lot. So I just feel that, yeah, trusting that it doesn't end. It doesn't end at all.
And it gets harder because, you know, like I mean, it's not true that we have control when our children are inside of us, but we have this perception of safety, like they're inside me and I can protect them somewhat. And then when they're outside of your body, it's like, oh,
I can't do anything anymore.
But especially when it comes to, like, injury is a different thing, but when it comes to illness, my perspective on illness has completely shifted since having my babies. I see the illness as the healing now, and it, just looking at it from that different perspective took so much of the fear out of it for me. So, like, if my child now is running a fever, or they've got the runs, or they've got a bad cough or something, I just see that as their body's intelligence going, like, there's something in here that I need to get out, and this is the way that I'm going to expel it. Whether it's through, you know, coughing up that phlegm, or having a really high fever, or having a runny nose, or having the runs or something. It's their body's intelligence going, there's something that I want to get out, and this is how I'm going to get it out. And that took all the fear of the illness away from me, because beautiful. It's just like their body's doing exactly what it's designed to do. I trust that their bodies are always orienting towards life.
Yeah,
you know,
very true.
That's, and same with eczema. Yeah, like Stevie was my eczema baby. Her detox pathway is her skin. So if there's something in there that needs to come out, it comes out through her skin. And seeing it in that light just took so much of the anxiety out of it for me, where I'm like, okay, great, your body's doing exactly what it's going to do. I'm going to support you best I can with skin to skin, or homeopathy, or breastfeeding, or, you know, whatever it is, but I'm not trying to fix you. Your body's doing a great job, and I'm just going to support your body in that process.
Yeah, just giving it the optimal space and the optimal whatever it is with food, or or just environment. And I think that's a really big one when it comes to illness.
Yeah, what's within my control? Diet, lifestyle, toxins, you know, to some extent those things are within my control, and I'll do what I can to make sure that that's all on point. And then the rest of it is out of my control, you know. Like Sienna had gastro last week, and it's challenging when you have a little baby that's so unwell, but I had to just keep reminding myself that if her body is getting all this stuff out, then it needs to come out. It
needs to.
It's not something that I need to try and stop. I just need to support her while her body's doing what it's got to do, you know. And I think I feel well equipped to parent in that way, because I did that hard work through wild pregnancy and through my free births. It's not like one ends and the other begins. Like, it's just I'm just doing the same thing that I've always been doing, trusting my babies, trusting my body, trusting my babies' bodies, that it's all orienting towards life, you know?
And that's not something that you just understand straight away. That takes, like, developing, that develops over time. It's just something that, you know, you think it's all good, everything's good, and then it pops up and you're like, fuck, what could I have done to do that? Like, I remember with Atlas, you asked me so many times about my nonna's death. And I was like, yeah, all good. And then when it popped up, and I'm like, what was that in me? It's a sore spot for me where I can't touch it because it's too tender? Or am I just sitting pretty on my rock, mermaid rock, and don't want to, you know, just want to be pregnant and glamorous, and that's it? Like, what is that? Is it or both?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both. And again, like, only you can answer that question for yourself. And I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. But also, like, I think you need to give yourself credit for the work that you've done since Atlas's birth, because it could have been very easy for you to stay in that story, to be like, oh, well, that C-section had to happen.
Yeah.
It was necessary. There was no other way about it. Whereas you've gone, like, let me really look at this and go, like, what happened? What could have been done differently? What do I need to look at for next time, you know? And a lot of women won't want to do that work, and that's fine. Like, it's everyone else's journey. You know, you do what's best for you, but the opportunity to do that work is always there if you choose to do it. Most women that have had a C-section in the past will be in that story of, like, oh, I would have died, my baby would have died. I mean, we've all heard it.
Yeah, I was saved.
Yeah. And I think most women, like, pretty much every single woman that's had a C-section that comes to free birth afterwards, they look back at that and be like, I know that didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
And I know that I need to do something different to make sure the same thing doesn't happen next time. And I love that for those women, and I wish that more women were willing to do that level of work. But I get it. It's hard. It's scary. And it's painful. Like, it's painful to look at at those experiences and be like, that didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Because the blame goes on you. You think that it's your fault. I think that's it's just interesting when physical situations are just a symptom or based on unfixed emotional stuff. And it's just deep work and just recognizing that your thought patterns, that it's just acknowledging it. Like you can't see it, like you don't know it's there if you don't actually catch yourself thinking it. So that's just sitting with it, and being around people that have the same frame of mind is really important as well. I think that, when I was at parties or people like, where are you having what hospital are you going to? And I'd say a home birth. People look at you like, are you sure you want to do that?
Don't you care about your baby?
Yeah. And I think that could have been like, I don't know, I felt like maybe I was really in my power then, but then when it got hard, those voices kind of come up as well. So maybe it was best to just be like, make up a hospital or just, sometimes if you're not that much in your power yet, just to protect what could potentially happen, I guess.
Well, like I said before, we're so energetically open in pregnancy, and that makes us really susceptible to other people's projections as well. So, like, my advice to women is, like, lie about your due date for starters. Give yourself 2 weeks, because the second you hit 40 weeks, which is just an arbitrary number, it's completely made up, 3% of women will give birth on their due date. It's like, is the baby here? Is the baby here? Is the baby here? And it plays on your mind, and it starts to wear you down. And also that, but what if something goes wrong? What if something goes wrong? And if you have the energy to go toe to toe with someone about that and be like, well, what exactly?
Most of the time in pregnancy you don't.
You're like, but that's the thing. Most of the time you haven't got that energy.
No.
Like, you're pregnant. You're growing a whole entire human. You're vulnerable. So I think it's okay to protect yourself from that by lying to people, because you don't owe people anything.
No.
If you think you can be like strong in your power and say like, thanks for your interest, but I'm actually not discussing my birth plans with anyone, then you can do that. Or you can be like, I'm going to the Northern. Like, I've had clients where they're like, my family are really pushing me for an ultrasound, and I'm like, here you go on Google, there's your scan. Like, just give them that. They're not going to know.
No, they're not.
And if it's going to save you the headache, then great. For me personally, I am very outspoken about my choices, and I'm willing to go and spend the time explaining to people why I make the choices I make. But that's not the case for everybody. And I think most of the time the path of least resistance is just set a strong, loving boundary and say, like, I'm not going to discuss this with you. Or if you don't feel like you can do that, lie. Yeah. Personally, I think setting the boundaries is a really great opportunity for taking that level of responsibility for yourself and being in integrity with your choices. So I always lean towards that, but, each to their own. If you know it's going to be an uphill battle, if your mother-in-law's an obstetrician or something, just...
Well, knowledge is power when it comes to this sort of stuff. And if you're not, like, a lot of mums that chose to do this, that especially with pregnancy brain, you don't even know what you're saying half the time. And for you to be able to talk properly and clearly, where they can understand and still be really polite about it, that's an art in itself.
Yes.
So, I feel that, just setting the boundaries and just really being clear about it, but also, having that community and really leaning on that.
Yes.
And, venting to your people, or the people that understand, or just sharing your concerns or asking, what did you do in your situation? Just really leaning on that, which is what I think I would do much more next time, because I have that more community now, where before I really did it was...
Well, that's the thing.
I was new in it.
We've had to create this community because it didn't exist,
Yes.
So... I feel very, very lucky and very proud of the community of freebirthers that we've created.
The mothers group is so
great,
beautiful. I love everyone.
They're amazing women, and it's a special kind of energy when you get in the room with, even if it's just 5 or 10 other women that are on the same page as you and have the same beliefs as you, and like we're all just there lifting each other up, and there's so much magic in that. And I'm glad that we've created it, because it will be easier for all the women that are yet to come.
Yep.
But I mean, we had to do the hard yards and create it because it just didn't exist.
It didn't exist. And the like-minded part is really, that's the word there. That's really important. Because when you share stories with people that are just completely opposite, it just, like you said, you're so open and susceptible to all that was completely opposite to what your belief is, and it's a lot. So having that community, it's so refreshing, and it
Just
that
fills your
sense of
cup.
peace,
Yeah.
you know, in your body. It's just like, oh, I don't have to lie. I don't have to put my bloody
my guard up.
It's just, and that's what you crave during pregnancy. You just want peace.
Yeah.
So having that community, it's really nice. So well done, first of all. It's beautiful.
Well, yeah, I get as much out of it as the rest of the mums do as well. Like, I leave those mothers groups just feeling so full and so enlivened by the conversations, and like just like sitting in a room having a cuppa with like-minded women. It just fills my soul.
It's beautiful. It's so nice. It's just, I've had a few conversations with the mums from that group as well, and I'm just like, you're like, we're friends.
Yeah,
like,
my
we
people.
can, my people, hello people. It is, because it can feel really alienated and isolated when you make decisions that's so far from the mainstream. You just feel like you're the one with the three heads.
And the trick with that is being so confident in your decisions that you don't mind being the one that with the three heads.
Yeah.
Like, like when it comes to, like, can we say the V word on this?
Go for it.
When it comes to like not vaccinating my kids, couldn't give two shits what anyone thinks about it, because I'm so comfortable and confident in my decision that anyone else's projections, they don't even touch me.
Yeah, that's
because
great.
I'm solid in my decision making around that. It's the same with my decisions around childbirth. It's the same with my decisions around how I'm going to educate my kids. Like, what you think about my choices doesn't bother me, and it's none of my business.
No, and it's your choices are your choices because you're the one that can make the best decisions for your baby.
Yeah, and I'm the one that has to live with my choices.
Exactly.
You know? So
exactly.
So like the only person that really I take into account when making the decisions about my children is my husband, because obviously, like, he gets a bit of input as well.
A bit.
But the caveat on that is when it comes to childbirth, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He gets to support my choices, because at the end of the day, it's my body, and I'm the one that needs to live with what is going to happen or not happen to my body. But yeah, when it comes to like our choices around vaccinating and around homeschooling and all of that, I don't really care what other people have to say about it, because they're my babies and I know what's best for them.
And we're all so different. So for everyone to do the same thing, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, but that's what we're like. It's like, no, go with the herd, comply. This is like, we've got our whole lives mapped out for us. Like, when your baby's born, you get the little green book that will tell you like how much they should weigh and how many vaccines they need to have, and they can start kinder at, is it 2 or 3 now? Like, they're so quick to want to disconnect us from our babies, and do that for the next 12 years, and then they'll move out and go to university, and then they'll work and
then you look at
the machine, and then they die.
And then you look at countries like Denmark and Sweden and all these countries where they don't do kinder until they're 7, and how smart they are, that is insane. They're much more of a smarter country than what we are.
And that's where we are with our kids at the moment, is like, we're not going to do any sort of structured education with them until at least 7.
Yeah, that's the age 7,
Michael
isn't it?
turns 7, I'll reassess and see if I want to continue down the homeschool route, or whether I want to put him into some sort of Steiner or whatever. But definitely for now, for the next few years, it's just going to be free learning through being, there's not going to be any structured education.
Well, kids learn through play. They learn through being and existing and exploring. Like, when we especially boys, we put them in a room of not being able to run and play. Like, that's just going to do complete damage to them. So it's so important for them to have that play. And I think that as a mum as well, forgetting that play, like, that's really important with boys too. Remembering that, you have to play too. Play with them. Get out of the kitchen and stop washing or doing all this stuff. Like, it's really nice to be able to have that reminder and be in that frame of mind, which I've had to do a lot of the time. Just remind myself, it's just, you can just be today. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's so many competing priorities, but like, the dishes can wait, and the laundry and whatever, like, the house is a mess, that's all right, let's just go outside.
We have kids, the house is not supposed to be clean all the time. Let them make a mess. And
the other side of that is, like, if I am cleaning the house or whatever, then I'm going to find a way to make it fun, and Michael and Stevie can help me with it.
Yeah.
Like, Michael loves the steam mop. I don't know what, he loves using the steam mop.
Really?
So it'll take him 10 times as long as it would take me, but he will actually mop the house. So I just like, go for your life,
Have fun, buddy.
And
Atlas loves a broom.
He loves it, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Stevie loves the little dustpan. So she's like, she's picking dirt up and then dropping it 1 meter down the road. But I'm like, I don't care, like, it's just, about involving them in whatever it is that I'm doing, and like we're having fun at the same time. It's great.
It's great, yeah.
But it's definitely, you know, about relinquishing that control, because it's like, oh no, here, let me show you, or let me do it. Oh, I can just do it quicker. Like,
No.
it's like just,
I saw a video yesterday on Instagram. It made me giggle. It was this lady where she was teaching. She had the little girl in the Montessori tower, and she was cracking an egg. She's like, hit it. She goes, hit it again. And she was there for, I reckon, a good minute just trying to open the egg. And the mum just sat there and watched her the whole time. She didn't try to help her. She was like, come on. And she finally pulled it, and it went into the bowl. And the top comment was, you just healed all my childhood traumas with your patience from this video. And it's so interesting seeing that as an adult, because you're like, that's beautiful. You don't see that as a bad thing.
but how hard is it to just do nothing?
It's so hard. I was getting impatient watching the video. I was like, oh my God.
Like, you know, and that's the thing. It's like we just have to kind of like relearn how to do nothing. And it's the same with birth. It's the same with parenting. It's the same with so many things. Like sometimes doing nothing, most of the time doing nothing is the best course of action.
Of course.
But we're just so hardwired to need to act.
Yeah. It's like how are our kids supposed to know what stillness is if we're never still? You know, it's so important to have that, and just to have time of just silence, and it's okay just to be and just, you know, listen to birds, or, you know, we do that every morning. We go outside and we just listen to the birds, and he loves it. He could just sit there for like in my arms for like 10 minutes and puts his head on my shoulder, and he's just observing. Like he doesn't need a phone or a tablet. He doesn't need TV. He doesn't need any of that. He's just taking it all in, and it's so beautiful to watch. I really love it.
Yeah, it's when you strip it back like that, it's amazing how very little kids need. Like it's okay for them to be bored sometimes. Like
it's important for them to be bored, because I think when I'm bored, I'm just like, get my phone. But I'm like, it's all right just to like kick it for a bit, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I feel like we're just constantly disconnecting without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Like we're constantly coming out of ourselves and into the phone, or, you know, or the TV or whatever it is. Like there's always an opportunity to distract.
Yeah. But it's also, that's another reason we're doing it, to remove ourselves from what's really happening internally. And if people are filled with pain and trauma, it's just like, I don't want to think about that. So let's just keep So let's just distract. But then that gets passed on to our children, and then they do it, and then that gets passed on to their child. So it's just this ancestral shit that we really have to, you know, like we said before, by seeing it, we can acknowledge it and we can change it.
And like, you know, we're turning the needle ever so slightly. Like I'm sure there's going to be many, many, many things that I've done to my kids that they'll be talking about in 20 years' time.
There's always something.
You know.
But if you can see it and you can change it, why wouldn't you?
Exactly right. And yeah, I really believe that begins at birth or before.
Yeah.
It
pregnancy.
Begins with
conception,
pregnancy.
yeah.
Conception even, yeah. Like, I mean, ideally, we'd love to be doing all of this work pre-conception. But, you know, the reality for most of us is that we're pregnant and then we're like, now what?
Yeah.
And, you know, so we get chucked into a little bit of boot camp, but that's fine. Like, you know, as soon as you're aware that there's work to do, you've got that opportunity to do it. And I absolutely love watching that transformation with my clients, where the women that give birth are completely different women to the ones that I met at the beginning of the
I can imagine.
Like, it's just,
especially the VBAC mums.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Jamie's a great example of that as well. Like she had her 2 C-sections, and then free-birthed her 3rd baby. She's about to free-birth her 4th baby, and she is a completely different woman to who I met 2 years ago.
I can imagine.
Like, she's, you know, really stepped into herself and become comfortable with herself.
Yeah.
And that's what I see with all these mums, where it's like you don't need to find yourself. Like, you've been there all along. It's about stepping into that version of yourself and being comfortable there and being confident there, and being willing to show that version of yourself to the world, rather than keeping her hidden away, being meek, being that people pleaser. People pleasing is a huge part of it. You know, like we're conditioned from the get-go, like, don't take up too much space.
Yeah, don't be
too argumentative. You know, and, you know, shedding all those layers and being like, this is me, and I'm happy with me, and if you're comfortable, great, and if not, then that's cool too.
Loudly and proudly myself.
Yeah.
And who doesn't vibe with me is just an indication that we're not supposed to.
Exactly. And you know what? It makes so much space for the people that are supposed to be
Exactly.
there.
Exactly.
What coming into my, being really confident in myself, I have never repelled more people in my life. I've become very polarizing. People are either so drawn to me or they're just like, wow, I hate you.
Yeah.
And both are great. I lost a whole bunch of friends, particularly through COVID, and it just made so much space for all these new women to come into my life where I'm just like, where have you been all my life?
I know. Hello, friends.
It's
great.
It really, for me, it's taken to come into my 30s to have a bunch of women around me that are just like, you know what? Yeah, you're loud and you're direct and you tell it like it is, and I love that about you. And I was like, what do you mean? It's the first time where I've really been accepted for who I am, and I love it so much because I've always had that story in my mind where I've been like, you're too much for people, and that's why people don't like you. So to have women be like, you are you're so perfect. Much, and I love it.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh really? People
exist.
Like that? Yeah,
we exist in the world. We're not just. We're not alone. And like you said, the minute you get rid of those people that don't serve you or don't really make you happy, you're just there because you're afraid of being alone. You're not going to be alone. You're making room for those beautiful people that align with you and vibrate on your level. That's power.
It's scary stepping out onto that precipice though, being like,
of course,
this is me,
I don't want to be alone. This is that's our primitive thing of, loneliness is danger.
Exactly.
Because so when we're in a tribe, but your tribe changes, it evolves, especially from your 20s to your 30s, big time.
Yeah, it took me a while to realize that, but then coming into that myself, it's so clear now.
Yeah,
and I can see women struggling with that, taking that leap. And I'm just over here being like, do it.
But it's okay. You're going to land on your feet. The floor is going to be there when you jump. I promise you. It always is.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's nice just seeing people out there that are just on your same team and just, rooting for you on the sidelines. It's important.
And I just think, like I said, I'll make a whole bunch of new mistakes with my kids, but I feel like the gift that I'm giving them of being so comfortable in my own skin is that they're not going to have to do all that work.
No. One less thing.
There's one less thing that they're going to need to do.
Yep, 100%.
I'll make a whole bunch of new mistakes, that's fine.
Yeah, but you're not conscious of those mistakes. The mistakes that you're conscious of that you've seen through the way you were raised or people around you were raised, that's what you're changing, and that's what you know. The rest will come with time, and, maybe your kids will learn when they have kids.
Exactly.
But that's evolution, isn't it?
But the other thing that I'm really proud of is how normal birth is going to be for my kids.
Oh my goodness.
They come running if they hear a birth video on my phone.
Oh really?
Oh mummy, the baby come out. And I'm like, yeah baby, the baby's coming out. And I mean Stevie attended births with me as a baby. Sienna's attended births with me as a baby. Oh my goodness,
of course.
So especially for my daughters, birth is not it's going to be just another day.
Normal.
Yes, it's the most transformative, amazing experience of your life, but also it's just another day. And I love that it will be so normal for them.
You see videos. I saw a few videos of this mum. She was birthing in I think it was Byron or somewhere where they were just in the river, right? And it was the kids were playing, the guys were having a barbecue or whatever. It was just another day. And the mum was just doing her thing. She was left alone and she was just doing her thing. And then when the baby came, it was, but during, it was so normal. And I'm like, we're just put so much attention, and the minute we have a water breaks or the minute we feel our first contraction, straight call the hospital. Do we have to go?
Yeah, well, that's TV birth for you, isn't it?
Because
yes. If they actually,
but that's where we learn it from. Most mums.
Where else are you going to learn
That's it.
But if we actually depicted birth in movies and TV shows the way it was, nobody would watch it because it would be so boring. 99% of the time, you're just sitting there doing nothing. The woman's just in her process, and that process can take many hours or days sometimes. Nobody would watch it.
No.
Because it's not dramatic.
No. I hear stories of some of my girlfriends, right, that they've had their first birth compared to their second, and she was yep, call the OB straight away as soon as she felt her contractions. And then but the second time,
and they'll be like, oh, when you're more than 4 centimeters, but I'm not sitting there shoving my hand up women's vaginas to tell you how dilated they are. So I'm like, it's all labor, and I've said it many times on my Instagram, until you feel like you're dying, you're in labor. Like, and the reason I set it
Dying,
up
oh
like
my
that
God.
is it's that mindset piece.
Yeah.
Because if you're sitting there going like, I don't feel like I'm dying yet, it's a normal day, it's a normal day, it's a normal day, then you'll set yourself up for the long run.
Yeah.
Whereas if the second you have that first contraction, you're like, I'm in labour, and you're bouncing on the ball and doing all the things.
You got time.
48 hours later, you're like, I'm so tired, I can't keep doing this, you know. So it's like, and I think women forget or they don't realise that physically there is nothing you need to do to have this baby.
No.
Like,
It's going to come out of you
exactly.
sooner or later.
You don't need to walk up and down the stairs or walk the curb or bounce on the ball or like
It's whatever you feels good for you.
You don't need to do anything.
No.
Like you could literally not move and a baby will come out of your body. Like women can be in a coma and a baby will come out.
Really?
Yes, literally. You can be in a coma and a baby will come out of your body because physically there is nothing you need to do to get this baby out.
No way. I did
Yes.
not know that.
And that's, if you look up twilight sleep, which is horrific, and if you compare that to what's happening now, I feel like we haven't got it so bad. But they used to drug these women so much that they would pretty much just be in a coma. They'd be in a straitjacket, like lying there completely off their heads, not being, present, being in their bodies at all. And these babies just come out because the physical, what's happening inside.
When was this, sorry?
This would have been the 50s and 60s.
Whoa.
The cervix dilating is actually the fundus, the top of the uterus, pulling the cervix up and away out of the baby's way. And the fundus, the top of the uterus, is building. It's a muscle. It just gets thicker and thicker and thicker as the top of the uterus builds. So that's how you dilate. And then once you're fully dilated, that big muscle then propels the baby out. So it's your uterus pushing your baby out.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not actually you having to physically push your baby out. There's nothing that you need to do. Your body's going to do it all for you. You just need to get out of the way mentally.
Yeah.
To let it happen.
Getting out of the way mentally, that's a big one.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done. It's as simple as you can let it be.
It's like, move, brain.
Yeah, literally. Like that's the problem. Yeah, our big neocortex, that big thinking brain, which is so useful to us in our day-to-day life, is absolutely useless when it comes to birth.
Isn't that interesting? But I feel like, how you said, like, you don't have to do much in order to, like, bouncing on the ball or walking up the stairs. Like, that's just a way to deal with your mental side. I feel like keeping you busy and distracting you from what is going to happen. Like, that's dealing with the mental side, not the labour itself. So I feel like that's, yeah.
And I think it gives women a sense of control.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, when we have absolutely no control, but it's like, well, I can do something. And I identified that in my own births as well, where the second, with Michael and Stevie, the second I felt like I needed to push, I was like, right, let's push a baby out, because that was something that I could control and something that I could actively do. And I had to work really hard to get these babies out. Like, I pushed with both of them for an hour and a half because I was so in my head pushing these babies out rather than letting my body do what it was doing. So with Sienna, I really focused on not doing that with her. Even when I felt pushy with her, I was just breathing through it and just letting my body do it. And she was out in 20 minutes because my body did it for me rather than me trying to take control of that situation. And really could feel the difference in my body where I could feel the invitation to get into my head, and I was like, nah, not doing it. Just going to be in my body, just let my body do what it's doing. And birth unfolds so smoothly when we let it. But we've always got the opportunity to sabotage it for ourselves.
Of course.
To different extents, obviously. I don't feel like I, sabotaged my birth by pushing my babies out, but I can see how I hijacked the process.
It's another layer that you could avoid next time. More surrender. That was a big word for me during pregnancy with Atlas. Surrender. That word came up in everything that I did. Every card that I pulled, every conversation I listened to, like, it was just, I was surrounded by that word. And I thought I did, but it's just like you said, you think you're doing the right thing at the time, and then on the other side, you're like, that's why hindsight's such a beautiful thing, isn't it?
And it's not about laying blame or there being fault.
No.
Like, it's just you made the decisions that you could make for you in that
the headspace
moment
that you were in. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And always, with the benefit of hindsight, would we make different decisions? Like, there's many things that I would have made different decisions if I like, you know, in a hindsight, but we'd never have hindsight.
No.
We have the present moment.
Yes.
So the choices that you're making for you are right in that moment.
Yeah.
It's not for me to judge. It's not, you know, it's not for anyone to say what they would have done differently, because they're not in your shoes. They're not in your body.
No.
You know, and you're the one that needs to live with the decisions that you make. So it's, but yeah, I think that's, like, I think it's that blame piece is huge, and it's really hard to be like, well, there's actually no fault, there's no blame, like it just is, you know.
It just is, yeah.
And I have this conversation with my clients, particularly around death, because that's, you know, always a possibility. And I think free birthers are more acutely aware of that than anyone else, because, like I said, death happens. Death happens in the hospital, in the home, in a free birth, in a C-section. Like it's a possibility for all of us, and it's something that very few of us actually acknowledge. And I had to do a lot of work around that for myself with Sienna's pregnancy. That was the theme that kept coming up for me in her birth. Yeah, I had this big fear of death that just kept coming up for me with her. And I had to really sit with myself and analyse my choices and be like, if I do this, if I have this wild pregnancy and I have this free birth and my baby dies, will that have changed anything that I would have wanted to do? And the answer was no. I really believed that what I was doing was what was safest for me and what was safest for my baby, and that if I had a dead baby at the end of that, then that was outside of my control.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't change the choices that I was making. But I acknowledge that from the outside, people would blame me.
Of course.
But again, like I said before, I'm so solid with my choices that really I don't care about what people think of me.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable in the decisions that I've made, and that's what drives me, you know. It's a practice to get there, and it's a practice to stay there, but it serves me well because I know that I'm never making any decisions based on fear.
No. So if you want to do anything that's in regards to developing as a human, isn't it? It's just birth at home, because you've got to deal with all your shit, all your triggers, all your messes, because it definitely is just mirroring in front of you big time.
100%.
Oh, well, let's wrap it up. But thank you so much for that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I hope you got what you wanted. I feel like I jumped around a little too much, but it was a good conversation.
It was an honest episode, and that's what it all goes down to. But where can people find you?
So I am at _authentic_birthkeeper on Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. So yeah, people can find me there.
Beautiful. I'll put them in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for listening. Wherever you're listening from, have a beautiful day. Peace.
Thanks.
That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the episode and received a few good takeaways from it. If anyone popped into mind while you were listening that you feel may benefit from it, please share it across. Your support really helps promote my podcast. And to follow all the latest things that I'm up to at the moment, you can find me on Instagram at Steph Marie Holistic Healing. Thank you again, guys. Have the best day, and we'll see you on the next episode.